The hospital looks quiet from the hill, a block of pale concrete with its windows grayed by dust, the kind of quiet that comes from long neglect rather than peace. I watch for 10 minutes with my binoculars, counting shapes that move wrong and shapes that do not move at all. The ambulance bay has one door propped by a broken mop, and the awning still holds a faded sign for a blood drive. I pick the route with the fewest lines of sight, keep the wind to my back so my scent moves away from the main entrance, and step down into the service road with my pack tightened and my light taped so only a slit shows. The storm clouds sit heavy, and the air holds that wet metal smell before rain, which is as close to cover as I am going to get. The ambulance bay door lifts with a low scrape that skims across the empty lot. I freeze and count to 12, long enough for an answer if there is one. Nothing answers. I roll under the half-open panel and pull it down behind me until the bottom lip touches the floor. Inside, tire marks are fossilized in grit. A single gurney leans sideways, and there is a vending machine with a cracked front that I mark for later. I make a habit of not standing in doorways. I move left, into a narrow corridor marked Supply and Environmental Services, because those rooms are usually near stairs, and stairs usually give choices. My headlamp is covered with 2 strips of red plastic and a sliver of electrical tape, just enough to see floor edges and door handles. I keep my breathing low and shallow through the filter mask so steam does not flare the light. Somewhere above, water taps a steady drip, and something loose knocks with the wind. I like sounds I understand. I list the ones I do not. The first locked door is just a latch with a small window, and the glass is wired. I use the foldable pry bar at the hinge pins to pop it just enough to slide through. Inside is a housekeeping closet. Mop heads, rolls of trash liners, a box of nitrile gloves gone brittle, and a stack of paper gowns. I take a handful of the trash liners for makeshift sandbags and weatherproofing, and the paper gowns for rags. In the corner is a yellow cart with a squeaky wheel. I flip it and lube the axle with a drop of oil from my kit until it turns smooth. I do not want noise following me like a bell. The emergency department hallway opens with a curve. The power is dead, so the motion lights do nothing, and the monitors behind windows show their dark faces like dead fish eyes. I slip into the first trauma room, then the second, checking under each bed and behind curtains. I do not look too long at the dried marks on the floor. I find a box of surgical masks sealed in plastic and a set of sterile drapes that will serve as good clean ground cloths. In a drawer, there is a plastic-wrapped cuff for blood pressure and a stethoscope, which are not food, but are still useful for listening through walls. I prefer a camp with one door and a second exit, and the emergency department has too many intersections and too many glass walls. I move deeper toward radiology and medical records, where the rooms narrow into thicker doors. The signs say images, CT, and MRI. MRI rooms are sealed like vaults because that magnet once pulled carts across the floor. Those doors are my kind of doors. I try 3 handles before I find an MRI prep room with a mechanical latch. It opens to a small space with cabinets and a pass-through to the scanning room. The scanner itself sits like a huge white ring in the dark. I do not care about the machine. I care about the walls. I drag 2 rolling cabinets to block the prep room door, stack the paper drapes as a mat, and set my pack in the corner where the door swing cannot reach. I unpack in the same order every time: water, stove, food, batteries, radio, blanket. I tape a glow stick behind a metal tray so it throws only a faint reflection on the ceiling. I mark a map in my notebook with pencil, ambulance bay, ED, radiology, stairs. I log sounds each hour. Routine is a ladder I can climb when the building feels like it wants to push me off. First water. The hand-washing sink in the prep room is dry. That means either the building is cut off or the line is shut at the main. I note the direction of the cold pipe and trace it along the wall into a chase that runs toward the plant. Plants in hospitals are near the back, with boilers, air handlers, and generators. If I can reach the roof and set a rain catch during the storm, I can stretch what I carried. I wet a cloth with a splash from my bottle and wipe the rubber seal of the inner door, then the handle, small quiet chores to claim the room. I scout in a spiral. From the MRI prep room I step out, count paces to the nearest stairwell, and open the fire door just enough to register the smell. It has that cool, concrete scent that stairwells keep even after years. No rot, no sour stink of many bodies together. A good sign. I climb to the next landing and pry the door an inch. The hallway beyond holds pediatrics, and a mural of balloons sits flaked on the wall. I close it. I do not want that wing. Too many rooms. I go down instead. The lower level is mechanical. The door has a push bar and a small mesh window. I mask my light further and bend close to scan for movement. Dust sits unbroken on the floor. I step through and breathe through my mouth to keep the old smell out of my nose. The generator room is locked, but the viewing window shows a big diesel unit quiet and cold. The fuel tank gauge sits at a quarter. If I can bypass the start circuit for a few minutes, I can run lights in a small area and maybe power a pump. But noise draws company, and I would be trading silence for convenience. I file the option for emergency use only. On the way back, I pass the security office. The window glass is crazed but intact. Inside, I see a rack with key tags, a monitor wall dead, and a locker hanging open. The door is steel with a mortise lock. I kneel and listen, then roll the knob with my pick set. The cylinder turns sloppy from age, which is a gift. The door opens with a light sigh. Inside, the keyboard still holds board labels: Farm, HR, Roof, Store, Elev Serve. I take Farm, Roof, and Store and loop them with paracord on my belt. In a drawer, I find 2 flare sticks, a box of AA batteries corroded on top with a few good ones beneath, and a spiral-bound manual for disaster procedures that is thin on reality but clear on maps. Pharmacy sits behind a roll-down gate near the main corridor. With the key, the gate slats rise with a rattle I do not like, so I wedge the switch and guide the roll by hand to quiet it. Inside, rows of shelves are marked by alphabet dividers. A lot is gone, which means others were here before, but the refrigerated stock is warm and useless except for saline bags. What I want: antibiotics, basic pain meds, antibiotic ointment, glucose tablets, oral rehydration salts, and anything with a long shelf life. I do not take narcotics. Those draw trouble. I find a carton of insulin pens buried under a stack of sample boxes and leave them because they are spoiled. I do take syringes, alcohol pads, and a sealed water bottle in a staff lunch bag. The paper on the pharmacist's desk has a small doodle of a cat in the corner. I feel the odd sting of that normal thing and put the paper face down. I avoid the cafeteria for now. Big rooms give echo, and echo sends my presence down halls I am not ready to guard. I pick a path to a staff kitchen on the 3rd floor instead, a place marked by a hand-lettered sign and a list of birthdays from 3 years ago. The fridge is dead and a little sweet in the way that dead fridges are. The vending machine is bolted, but the back panel screws are exposed. Blessed laziness. I remove 4 screws, pop the panel, and fish out bottled water, granola bars, and a package of salted crackers. I leave the machine looking intact. Small deceptions buy time. Rain starts in a fitful run on the roof, then settles into a steady drum. I take the roof key and climb. The door is stiff and has scraped marks around the latch where someone pried once before. I crack it and step into wind that tastes of wet asphalt. The roof holds vents, a rusted HVAC farm, and a low parapet with loose gravel. I set 2 trash liners in a U-shape with a clean sheet funneling into a bucket, weight the edges with bricks, and wire a small bell from a nurse's station to the access door to warn me if I get company while I'm up here. I watch the parking lot through rain or haze and see no movement that is not wind. Back in my room, I sit with the radio on the lowest volume and call across the simple bands. My call sign is not clever. I identify, ask if anyone reads, and list my position only as within city hospital grounds. The radio gives me the soft hiss of open air and the occasional click of someone far off, too far to matter. I log it. I do not use the emergency channel because I cannot answer a crowd. The storm makes the building tighter, as if the walls draw a little closer to listen. Night brings sound where there was none. I hear the shuffle of shoes at the far end of a hallway. I cut my light and lean with my ear to the MRI door. The movement comes, pauses, and moves again, off rhythm, with the drag of weight. One set of footsteps, light, then heavy, then light, an infected with a limp or a shoe half on. I wait until the pattern passes and count a new sound, a soft tap against glass, then the quick rattle of an impatient hand. The echo tells me it is 2 corridors away near the ED. I stay still long after it fades, because quiet is not always safe. Sometimes quiet is only a breath held. I use the time to build routine defenses. I wet the smooth floor with a thin line of powdered drink mix at ankle level across the corridor, an old tripwire trick that leaves a smudge if anything drags through. I tape a nurse's call bell to a doorknob and run the cord along the floor under a rug so it will jingle if the door moves. I wedge cleaning signs in 2 places where I can bump them down as sound decoys. I work slow, controlled, not from panic but from the same patience I would use to set a tent in wind. When I am done, the corridor holds my fingerprints instead of someone else's. Food is cold crackers and a granola bar. I drink 2 cups of roof water after a pass through a filter and a rolling boil on the alcohol stove, the flame hidden behind a tray so it does not glow in the hall. The taste is dust and plastic and rain. I chew like a person who will have to run, even if I do not plan to run. I check my laces. I open the notebook to write, Camp secure. North Corridor noise 1. No voices. Plan. Daylight sweep of admin and records. Avoid pediatrics. I underline avoid pediatrics. Sleep comes only in measured portions. I do not close my eyes hard. I set the timer on my watch for 90 minutes and tuck it under the bandage pouch so it vibrates my wrist instead of chirping. Dreams in places like this pile up quickly, so I get up before they can start. At the second waking, I hear rain slacken and a new sound from the stairwell bell, the faintest chime. I slide to the door and turn the handle a hair so sound comes through. A breath, a whisper, then words shaped in the metal rectangle. Hello? Anyone? Not a moan, not the flat noise of an infected. A person. I do not answer. I do not open. I tap the stethoscope into my ears and press the diaphragm to the door. The voice comes again, low, careful. Please. The hiss of a whisper is full of care and fear. My rule is simple. One person might be a man with a knife who brings 2 more. One person might be someone who needs help. The rule meets the rule. I wait. The steps move away. I mark them with a count in my head. It tracks 3 landings and fades. Either that person can move quietly, or that person is very tired. I wait 15 minutes, then step out with my light hooded fully by my hand, so the glow falls to my feet. The hallway is empty. The powdered drink line is scraped in one spot with a print of a shoe that narrows at the toe, small. A woman or a teenager. I follow to the stairwell and lean over the rail. A shape sits on the landing below, pressed against the wall just past the door. The head is down. The hands are on the knees in a way that says patience rather than collapse. I clear my throat on purpose to give warning. The head lifts. A face looks up with eyes wide but clear. Do not shout, I say. Say hi if you're not sick. Hi, the person says, voice rough from not using it. She lifts her hands, palms up to show she is unarmed, then gestures to a backpack tucked under her feet. I have water, she says quietly. I have food. I just want a door with a lock. I look for the small signs. Color in lips. No pale spit at the corners of the mouth. Steady gaze. I keep the rail between us. Come up slow, I say. Hands where I can see them. Stop if I say stop. She nods and moves like she has done this before. Her name is Mara. She was an oncology nurse, which explains the quiet way she moves and the steady. She keeps her words clipped to what matters. She answers my questions without playing games. She points to the pharmacy key on my belt and says, "If you took that today, your luck is better than mine." I do not ask for her whole story, because whole stories are a luxury that people purchase with safety and time. Safety and time are not on the shelf. I give her a corner of the MRI prep room and nod toward the second exit. If you hear me say a move, go through there and do not wait, I tell her. She agrees like someone who will honor an agreement. We split the night watch. I take first, because my eyes are already in the groove. She sits with her back to the inner door, an angle that lets her see both entries in a glance. She has a folding knife clipped to her pocket and keeps her hands open on her knees. I respect that. An hour in, the building announces new visitors without voice. A dull thud from downstairs. The faint metallic bark of a pry bar on the ED bay. Mara tilts her head. I nod once. We do not speak. We do not run. The front door goes under attack slowly, which is almost worse than fast. Wood resists with grit. Metal complains. At regular intervals, the knocks stop, and the air takes on the hollow pressure that means many bodies are close together, listening. The infected on the grounds begin to stir, drawn by rhythm. Once the pry give is enough, the rest will open like a zipper. I think about the generator and the intercom and reject the idea. Sound is plentiful already. I think about the sprinkler system and reject that too. If pipes are dry, I will only announce our position when nothing comes out. Instead, I take the small emergency radio and set it in an elevator lobby one corridor over. I wind the crank and tune it to static, then set the volume to a low, irritating buzz. I place a service bell beside it on a rubber mat, so a traveling vibration will jingle it lightly. I draw an arrow on the wall with a grease pencil that points past the lobby and write food in big block letters. I hate leaving lies, but I hate having company more. Mara watches without comment. She understands the ethics of bait and signs her agreement by standing ready with a fire extinguisher. The door at the ED gives all at once with a sound like a dropped cabinet. I feel the air shift as the building breathes in. Boots scrape. Voices come low with confidence. Not a large group, maybe 4. They walk like men who came to take. Two flashlights play over signage. The lights do not run over our hallway, because our hallway is dark and looks like waste and nothing. The sound of the radio pulls them to the lobby. One man laughs. Another kicks the bell so it rings messy. "Food my back," a voice says with a grin hidden in it. Then I hear a new noise, the wet foot shuffle that moves under the sharper human steps. The infected have come to the party. I tap Mara, and we slide the MRI door closed. We sit and wait, one eye on the crack at the bottom to watch for shadow movement. The men talk too loud. The infected answer with throat noises and the grind of teeth. The men's voices climb into a tone that says surprise without admitting fear. A scuffle breaks. Something hits a wall hard. The laugh disappears, replaced by a sharp plea that cuts off. The radio keeps hissing. The bell jingles on the floor for a long time, as if kicked and left to ring itself out. The building swallows the rest. I do not write anything for 10 minutes because my hands are busy keeping the silence steady. When it is done, we do not rush to check. We do nothing quickly unless quick is the only choice. The infected move like tides. They surge and ebb. We wait for the ebb. I change the bandage on a cut at my knuckle that I picked up on a rusty file cabinet because infection is a small war I can win. Mara takes out a small rosary bracelet from her pocket, rolls it once between finger and thumb without closing her eyes, then tucks it back. Her face shows no theater. She is not trying to convince me of anything. She is reminding herself of a shape of thought that keeps her in place. At first light, the rain drips through gray into a thin mist that lifts from the asphalt. We open the door and step into air that holds the copper smell of old blood made wet again. We do not step into the lobby. We listen from the corner. Down the hall, two infected paw at a vending machine, interested in their own reflection more than any prize. The men from the night are gone or changed or both. We do not need the details to know the result. We slip the other direction and move fast and quiet toward admin and records. Admin feels like a school. Low partitions, chairs on wheels, posters about teamwork. It is the least haunted place in the building because it is the least connected to bodies. I open drawers not for personal goods, but for objects with utility. Highlighters for marking trails, tape, rubber bands, a whole box of binder clips. I take a manual pencil sharpener. People in the old world loved electric ones. The manual kind is worth more now. On a bulletin board, a calendar page hangs with the last square surrounded by 3 exclamation marks and the word drill. That makes me snort once without humor. Records is cool and still. Paper has its own smell that crowds out everything else. I run my fingers along labels. Admissions, discharges, billing. I stop at a shelf marked Emergency Protocols and pull a binder with floor plans. It confirms what my eyes have shown. 3 stairwells, 2 sets of roof access, and a service tunnel that runs from the loading dock to a small outbuilding by the water plant. Tunnels are tempting and terrible. Rats love them. Humans did too once. I fold the map to pocket size and tape the fold so the paper does not fuzz. If we need to leave quickly, I want the route sitting against my ribs. We check the cafeteria in daylight. The smell is not bad. Someone cleaned it before the end. Trays sit stacked. The soda machine is dead but full of syrup we cannot use without CO2. The coffee machine has packets of filters. I take those for pre-filters over the water intake. In the kitchen, there is a box of sterno that makes me blink hard. Fuel without smoke means warmth with less risk. I hug the box to my chest for a second before I catch myself. The walk-in refrigerator door stands ajar. Inside, metal shelves hold plastic tubs that are no longer food. Mara closes it gently, as if not to disturb the memory. On the way back, we pass pediatrics. The mural of balloons is worse in daylight. Each room holds a different toy frozen mid-life. I do not want that wing, but I am drawn to it because it is a blind spot on the map. We stand at the threshold and listen. Silence has different weight in different places. Here it is thin, like something scraped a little too clean. My skin tightens the way skin does when cold air moves. "Quick," Mara says. We sweep the corridor with our lights pointed low. I do not look at the cribs. I look at vents, under beds, behind curtains. At the end of the hall, a door marked Playroom is wedged with a chair. On the chair is a note. "Do not open. We are sleeping in here. Please be quiet." I lift the paper and breathe through my teeth. The ink has run from damp. The date reads 3 years ago. We leave the chair where it is. Back in radiology, I reset our trip lines and add one more. A stack of cafeteria trays balanced near the door, a simple fall noise trap that can buy us 3 seconds of warning. I boil water with sterno and make 2 cups of broth from instant packets found in a drawer. The salt scratches at the tongue and brings thought back into a straight line. Mara pulls her socks off and rubs her feet dry with a paper towel, then rotates her ankles one at a time, small repairs for a machine in constant use. I check the weather through the roof access crack. The sky lightens in a cautious way. We talk because people who sit without words start to fold inward. She tells me about the night the hospital went quiet. She says the administrator kept using the phrase surge capacity until surge was not a number, but a flood that washed over words. She says she stayed longer than she should have, because leaving meant admitting that the systems she trained to trust were gone. I tell her about the strip mall clinic where I slept for a month, because it had one door and thick walls and a water heater that I could siphon, and how I left only when the last of the propane was gone, and the neighborhood started to treat it like a fortress to raid. We do not dramatize it. We list facts the way we would list supplies. By late afternoon, the infected that came in the night have wandered back out into the world to follow new sounds. The lobby is a mess of footprints and dark smears that I step around. I collect one of the men's dropped backpacks without sentimental inspection. Inside, a half roll of duct tape, a rusted multi-tool, a can of soup, and a small notebook full of marks that mean little to me. I take the tape and the soup and leave the rest. I do not take trophies. I do not want weight that is not food, water, tools, or clean cloth. In the generator room, I test the manual prime with the smallest push, just enough to see if the system holds pressure. It does. I stand with my hand on the lever for a full minute, measuring the choice. If I started at sunset, I can run lights for 5 minutes to fill a few buckets from any live pipe and recharge radios, but the sound is a beacon. Mara watches me with calm eyes and shakes her head once. "I lived on night shifts," she says. "You get good at dark." She is right. I let the lever settle back. Night 2 brings a different visitor, wind. The storm that carried the day breaks apart and leaves gusts that snake through broken seals and loose ducts. Doors groan, vents hum. An empty IV pole rattles faintly where it leans against a wall. I move quietly through the nearest hall and wedge felt pads under everything that vibrates, then jam a tongue depressor into the hinge of a squeaky cabinet. Little noises add up into alarm if I let them stack. When I finish, the building holds its breath again without complaint. Near midnight, the stairwell bell chimes once, twice, then stops. I cross to the door and listen with the stethoscope. Nothing. I open 2 inches. On the landing is a small plastic bin with a white lid. Someone set it there and moved away. Inside are blister packs of antibiotics, a bottle of iodine, and a note. You helped last night by drawing them away. I saw the food sign. Kind of funny. We will not come in if you do not want. We leave at sunrise. The handwriting is small and careful. I scan the corners and find no movement. I lift the bin and carry it inside. The world is not binary. It is not kind or cruel. It is dots of both, scattered. I add the supplies to our shelf and write bin gift in the log with an arrow. We sleep in turns until the badge watch reads 4 in the morning. The pre-dawn hours stretch and make minds soft. To keep mine steady, I clean my stove, count batteries, and check the edges of my knife with a light pass on a ceramic cup from the staff room. I perform one task from a list made months ago for exactly these hours. Sharpen a pencil until the shavings make a neat pile, sweep them into a bag, and label it kindling. Busy hands are an anchor line. At sunrise, the building looks less like a tomb and more like a shell. Light catches dust in the air and draws thin lines across the floor. We use the hour to do bigger work. We move 3 exam tables to block 2 hall cut-throughs. We tape blackout cloth over the small window in the MRI prep room. And we bring a second bucket of rainwater down from the roof, then hide the remaining catch under a tarp in case someone comes to the roof looking for the same idea. We do not own the roof, but we do not announce what we have. On the 3rd day, we decide to test the service tunnel. I do not like tunnels, but supplies in the outbuilding could make this camp sustainable for a week rather than 3 days. We pack light, empty packs, water, tools, and the radio. The tunnel access door sits at floor level behind 2 rolling linen carts. I tip them easy so they come down with a whisper rather than a crash. Beyond is a low concrete hall with pipes along the ceiling and a slice of light at the far end from a vent. The air is still enough that my own movement makes sound seem bigger. We go in single file, me first, Mara behind, hands brushing the wall so we do not trip on a rise in the floor. Halfway through, we stop. Ahead, a metal grate with a chain hangs across the path. The chain is cut. The grate is askew. I crouch and study the dust. There are tracks, not fresh but not ancient. A shoe print with a worn heel. A smaller print beside it. A rat skitters in the dark and sets my shoulders tight. I ease the grate aside and mark it with a strip of duct tape so I can tell at a glance if it moves later. The outbuilding door opens onto a small room with shelves of filters, belts, and a workbench. On the bench sits a red toolbox. I lift the lid and see a set of wrenches, a hammer, pliers that still spring, and a bag of zip ties. I put the zip ties in my pocket. Those are better than gold. Beyond the outbuilding is the water plant, a concrete block with a cylindrical tank. The tank has a clean-out hatch at the bottom. I crack it and sniff. Metal and chlorine, no rot. I do not trust it without a boil, even if a miracle happened, and pressure is still in the lines. But with the hatch, I can fill buckets faster than the roof catch when rain stops. We haul back a load and stash it in the MRI room where it stays cool. On the way, Mara stops and rests her hand on a wall for a beat, eyes focused far. My father used to say the hospital is a small city, she says quietly. When the city breaks, the hospital feels it first. She does not cry. She does not drift. She stands straight and keeps moving. Late that afternoon, the weather clears enough to cast a weak sunbeam down the main hall. Dust motes drift in it in lazy spirals. I recognize a sound that does not belong in a dead place. A telephone ring. Not loud. A single old handset somewhere that still has juice from a stray battery or solar trickle. It rings once every 10 seconds. It does not ring like a call. It rings like a trap. I motion to Mara and we both shake our heads in the same motion. We sit back and let whatever set that lure come find no prey. After 20 minutes, the ring stops. 10 minutes after, the lobby door handles rattle and release. Patience is a defense. On the fourth night, a small fire starts in the kitchen. Not from us, from a short in a wire that finally gave. The glow rises under the door and the air changes. I grab the extinguisher from our wall and move at a steady pace. Not a run. Because running shifts the world in ways that get people hurt. The kitchen door is warm, but not hot. I crack it and spray a clean line of dry chemical at the base of a smoking electrical box. The powder coats and smothers. The room fills with the throat itch of residue. I back out and close up. We open windows 2 rooms over with a slim gym to vent the dust. We put a towel across the bottom of our door. I mark the extinguisher as half spent with electrical tape so I do not forget later. The fire smell brings 2 curious infected to the cafeteria doorway. They stand and look in with dull interest, then wander off when the smoke thins. I watch without moving. My hands stay steady, because this is a chore like any other. After they go, Mara points at the calendar and says, "Thursdays were meatloaf day." I tell her I am grateful I missed that. We exchange the smallest smile, not a big one that would ring the bell of memory too hard. By the end of that week, our camp in the MRI prep room is a working cell. 2 buckets of water under a tarp, a food bin with a week's worth of starch and salt, and a few precious cans of fruit for morale emergencies, a battery rotation plan, and a logbook with more lines filled than blank. We know which corridors echo and which swallow sound. We know when the courtyard attracts birds and when the driveway pulls shamblers from the neighborhood. The place starts to feel less like a dare and more like a job site. That is when I know it is time to plan departure. Comfort in a dead place is bait just as bright as the word I drew on the lobby wall. We set departure for dawn 2 days out. That gives us 1 day to build travel kits and 1 day to rest in shifts. The route is the service tunnel to the outbuilding, then along the fence line to the creek, then up the overpass where the view is clear. We stage a cache near the outbuilding hatch, a sealed water jug, a small bag of rice, and a spare lighter, wrapped in trash liners and tucked under a compressor housing. If someone like the person with the bin gift comes by after, I want them to find more than echo. The last night always stretches. I lie on the floor mat and track each sound by tone until the building is a map in my head. Far wing, a loose sign flips in the air current. Stairwell, a drip into a bucket. Roof door, silent, good. I write a note and tape it to the inside of the MRI door. 2 travelers stayed here. We cleaned what we used. Water catch on the roof behind the 3rd vent. Please take what you need and make less noise than your fear tells you to make. I end with, good luck, then scratch it out and replace it with, stay smart. Luck is a word that hits wrong in places like this. Before dawn, we shoulder packs and do the room check in reverse. Nothing on the floor, no food left in corners to draw ants, and with them the small predators that follow ants. No glow sticks that might make a distant person think this is a place to set a permanent camp. Mara picks up the rosary bracelet, rolls it in her fingers once and slips it back in her pocket. We open the door, listen, and step into a hall we have walked so often, it feels like a measured thing. There is no ceremony. There is only sequence. The tunnel is colder than the halls. Our footprints from the first trip are dusty ghosts. The duct tape on the grate shows no disturbance. I move it and hold it so it does not clatter. When we reach the outbuilding, I listen a full minute before opening. The world outside breathes cool air and the sound of a bird. At the fence line, a single infected drifts along the perimeter, drawn to some sound down the block. We freeze in shadow until he passes, then slide to the creek. The water runs shallow over broken concrete, clear enough to see a bottle trapped and spinning. The overpass gives a view of the hospital that makes me pause. From up here, the building looks less menacing and more tired. The awning that once shaded ambulance crews sags. The windows hold rectangular holes that reflect the morning. On the roof, our water catch glints under the tarp. I do not wave goodbye. I do not make promises about returning. That place was a camp, not a home. A home asks for roots. Roots make slow targets. We are not slow. We walk the back edge of the neighborhood with our eyes scanning porches and rooftops. A dog barks 3 streets over, and someone hushes it with a snapped command that carries on still air. We keep our path wide. At a corner with a view of the old clinic where I stayed months ago, we stop and split the last can of fruit with the small folding spoon. The syrup is bright and simple. It tastes like a promise that does not overreach. We share sips of water and shoulder our packs again. By mid-morning, the hospital is a square in the distance. On the radio, a voice comes through thin and clean for the first time in days. If anyone hears this, East Ridge Camp is secure enough for trade. Water, basic meds, no promises beyond that. The voice is a man's, flat and honest. He gives a time to listen again, and a set of directions measured in landmarks, not street names. I look at Mara and she nods. We are both a little surprised to feel interest rather than suspicion. That is a good sign. It means the hospital did its work on us. It steadied us instead of tilting us. We keep moving. The road bends toward a line of trees, and the last view of the hospital disappears behind a warehouse wall. It is not a grand exit. It is 2 people taking the next steps with the gear they carried in, and a little more. Backpacks ride firm against our shoulders. The sun warms the top layers of our clothes. In a pocket, the small pencil I sharpened during the worst hour sits ready. I think of the note inside that MRI room, and hope the person who finds it needs the roof catch and smiles once when the bell rings on the stair. I let the thought pass and focus on the ditch ahead, because that is where my feet will go next. The world is not empty. It is occupied by risk and by work. The work continues. It is the road, the water, the sound at the edge of hearing, the decision to answer or not answer a voice calling softly through a door. The hospital is one chapter in a long ledger. It did not eat us. We did not own it. We did what people do. We measured, we cleaned, we planned, we moved. Then we left, and the concrete kept its own counsel behind us. By noon, the clouds break into slow islands and light runs across the fields in uneven patches. I adjust my hat and check our rhythm. Mara falls in beside me and points to the ridgeline that marks our next check-in with the voice on the radio. We walk without rushing. We choose shadow where shadow is useful and sun where sun means visibility. The day has space in it again. The kind of space that lets the mind straighten its shelves. I note the creak in my left boot and promise my foot I will find time to mend it under a tree later. A little repair beats a big injury. That rule always holds. At the bottom of a shallow slope, we find a stream that glints like a thin knife laid in the grass. I kneel and fill 2 bottles through the filter, then add drops of iodine for the last kill, because belt and suspenders is not vanity, it is survival. While we wait the contact time, I look back once more toward where the hospital stands beyond sight. There is no pull to go back. There is respect, That building gave us shelter without kindness, and we treated it with the same plain respect we give any tool. Use it right. Leave it in better shape than you found it. Let the next person step into a place they can read. We shoulder up when the timer beeps in its muted way and step back onto the road. The radio voice is due to call at 1 in the afternoon. We time our pace to reach a small hill before then so we can stop and listen high. I take the small note with our plan and clip it inside my hat, so if something takes me down, someone will have a map. Mara checks the zip ties and makes sure the spare knife rides where her hand finds it without looking. The day feels honest and sharp. The work feels real. At 1, the voice returns as promised. "East Ridge Camp," he says, same tone. "We will watch the tree line for a blue bandana on a stick. No approach after dusk. Do not bring the infected. Do not bring rage. Bring skill if you want to trade. Bring calm if you want to sit." It is a strange invitation and a reasonable one. I pull the blue bandana from my pack and tie it to the end of a thin willow branch. Mara nods once. We change course to angle toward the ridge, the hospital behind us without weight, and the day ahead with exactly the right amount. We walk into the afternoon light and leave the hospital to its slow job of cradling silence. Somewhere a bell on a stair cord waits for a careful hand. Somewhere inside those walls, water in a bucket sits covered, clear and ready. The camp we made there is not a monument. It is a breadcrumb for the next person to find, as someone left a bin for us. This is how the living move through dead places, not as owners, not as ghosts, but as workers passing tools hand to hand across the days. We keep passing them, we keep moving,